here. Actually, you and I met a couple years ago when I came to church here, and you've been here for a long time. You've grown up, sort of, so to speak, in this church. How did you get here? Like with all the stuff that you've been around and your upbringing, and how did you get to be here at the church and here as a small business owner and that stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. So how I got to the church is kind of a fascinating story. My family is in no way religious at all. My mom wasn't like anti-religion. It just wasn't something that we talked about in our house. So I was just a very curious kid, and I asked a lot of questions that people didn't have answers for. And when I got into middle school, there was this group called Young Life. Well, it was called Wildlife, but
Wildlife with a Y.
Wildlife with a Y.
Right.
Because it's cool and hip and it has to relate to
Yes,
middle school
yes.
students. Yeah. But it was Young Life. It's like the baby child for middle schoolers is Wildlife. And I met some really cool people there, and I just hung around, and I didn't really realize it was a religious organization until like at the end of having fun, they just mentioned this guy named Jesus. And so I went there forever. I started in 6th grade and then did 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, became a leader. And then one of my leaders in middle school for Young Life went to this church. And so then I got plugged in through him, but then I just ended up staying.
No, I think that's a great story. I was just resonating with, I went to Wildlife too, when I was in, middle school in Texas. But it was basically like pizza and beach volleyball after the high school football game. Like that was the cool thing. But yeah. And then there was a talk about this Jesus person. But I had already, I grew up in church. So it was like, this is different. But yeah, so it was different, totally different than my church experience. But I definitely, and went through Young Life and did that as well.
I think that I love the idea of Young Life as a whole. I really like getting kids introduced to people, and I think community is a huge, important piece in adolescence, and you need that. And I didn't have a very strong community at home nor in school and anything, so I'm super appreciative of what Young Life did for me. But the main reason that I stayed in church was for community and people. I love people. I love talking to people. But I would say that I really didn't have a relationship with Jesus or really know who God was in Young Life or even in my years staying at this church. I was just it kind of almost felt like it was a make-believe story that people talked about for 30 minutes every Sunday. I was the people are really cool. I'm going to stay here, but I have to suffer the consequences of listening to someone preach about God, kind of thing.
Luckily, that person now is me.
Yeah.
So she has to suffer the consequences.
I still feel the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I love that. So I resonate really a lot with what you're saying is growing up in church, and my parents made me go to church, but not in a abusive way, but just sort of no, this is part of the value of our family. And I think, but the thing was it was all about the community. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even the Jesus and the Bible. And that was fine. I mean, I went to graduate school to study this stuff, and that was all fine and dandy. And I love it. And I'm super nerd out about that stuff. But if there's not a community part to it, a why or people that you're connecting with. I mean, as an extrovert, I'm super into hanging out. So yeah, that's I like that idea of that community. But so in a church, especially in a mainline church, so which is this traditional understanding of churches, but there's often people all over the place, right? There's people like me who grew up in the church, people like you who found it in middle school and who doesn't have a family connection to it. And so we are caught in these middles of these stuff. And then also the middles of conversations, of generational conversations and political, ideological, theological conversations. So as you have engaged those conversations, led those conversations, grown in that, your understanding and of just the wider community, how have you been able to navigate being a young person in a place that is majority older people, but also being able to deepen your own sense of community and your own sense of participation and connection?
So when I started at this church, I'm going to start when my like job here started, because I got hired as the youth ministry assistant. So I was pretty much just paid to be like a leader. But when I started coming here, I was 14, and I don't know what it is, but old people just love me. Like I felt instantly welcomed. And I know that that is part of my like privilege of, if you looked at me, like I know someone would say, oh yeah, that girl's Christian because I'm white and blonde. And I like was a good girl in school. Like I didn't do anything bad. Like so I knew that I fit in the binaries of what a Christian looked like. And so I was very welcomed here, I think. And I was given a lot of opportunities that I think that, not a lot of people were given. So I took that, and I wanted other students, other young people to feel that like love and community that I felt. So that's why I got involved in the youth program, is that I wanted to share that story. Like I wanted the people who didn't feel like they belonged anywhere else, that they knew that they had a place here. But what I discovered was that like not everyone is like me. And I don't mean that as like in like an insult way.
Yeah, totally.
But people are different. Like you grew up in a church, I didn't. Some people like don't like church, but like I found myself stumbling upon people who I had no idea how to like help other people love them or how to love them. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
I wasn't taught what to do in these situations, and hindsight, you shouldn't be taught how to love someone, but when someone comes in and you don't know what to do, it's hard. Yeah.
So when there's like someone from a different culture or a different upbringing or different looks, sounds, acts, smells, different, like there is some sort of like, I don't know if it's evolutionary or whatever. There's some kind of like, oh no, like I'm different. Like, but I think recognizing that difference, like we talk about here about all are beloved. But I think what's interesting, what you said there about the binaries and about like, something else that I really resonated with was there's this personality kind of test called the Enneagram. And I register as an 8 most of the time, which is called the Challenger. And as a middle-aged cishet white dude who has a ton of education, who like sort of checks off all the privilege boxes, being able to have like, I want to kick the door open and like let everybody else in, like use that privilege for an advantage. But I was thinking about, as you were talking about church, as you were talking about and church, and you and I know because we work in this industry, in this calling, but there is this, like, this is a X church or a Y church and so if I'm this, I don't fit in here or that, and I think there's certainly space to like, not everybody fits everywhere. Like I don't agree with that, but I think not everybody fits everywhere for a lot of good reasons. But also I wonder about, we talk about that binary, that where we have like, oh, you are open and affirming of the LGBTQIA plus community. So, and that's totally fine. You think, which I can't believe we're still having that conversation in 2025, but it still is a conversation. But if you believe gay people actually are loved by God, which they are, then you can't go to this church, or if you don't, you can't go to this church. And thinking about that, this idea in our world right now, we have all these spectrums, all these like the autism spectrum and the spectrum of gender identity and sexual orientation and all those kinds of things. And that yet there's all this binary conversation around like either or, like you have to be liberal or conservative or I don't know, Christian or atheist or a certain kind of Christian or like all those things. You can't like that curiosity to be like, I don't know about that. Like, let me learn more, or like, no, that's not for me. But being able to say, hey, that's not who I am, but I'm interested to know how you got there.
Right.
So one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is how do we continue to spread a conversation to open up spaces for people who may, like you, be looking for that conversation, be looking for that community. And how do we also make space for folks that are like, who need that community, but they don't know how to engage in it, but they also are introverts. They don't want to be like accosted by people like me.
But yeah.
Or they don't like being in a big group church on Sunday morning and listen to some dude babble on or a woman babble on for.
Yeah.
So what is how do you engage in conversations where you find yourself in the middle of I can see both sides or whatever? How do you find yourself in that?
So going back to like when I started as the volunteer for kids, my main goal was to just make sure kids knew that they were loved. Like that is the only message that I ever wanted to spread, was that you have a safe place. Like the world is crazy and hard, and like it's not always as much as it's not always what you want it to be. And I wanted to let kids know that someone somewhere out there loved them. And then as I like grew in this position, I realized that kids weren't the only one that needed that message. And I think the church just missed a generation. Like we were focused on young kids, and then we were focused on like the elderly. And I felt as a young person, like we were being overlooked because we were the challenging generation. Like we were the ones that were like, oh, like gay people are loved and beloved, and I love them like regardless. And I think that the church overlooked us as a generation who were just questioning. And so what has helped me is that my personality type is I just love to argue. I love to argue, like, even if I'm wrong, I just love to argue, because I found that noticed. I found that arguing is like the way to get people talking, because if people are mad or upset, like they'll tell you and they'll talk to you about it. And I'm just I wouldn't say I argue. Well, I do definitely argue, but when I'm very passionate about something, I get very into it. And so it has taken me in the direction of communications, obviously, as for a church, because I'm very passionate about loving people, period.
I love that. I was thinking about, I always thought I would be a good lawyer, but like a trial lawyer. And not because I was particularly intelligent or whatever, but I just love poking holes in people's arguments. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even really like making my own argument, just like finding your argument and being like, oh, well,
yeah, you're wrong. Actually.
Right. You're right. And it wasn't even about like what I believe is more about tearing them down, which is not super healthy, to be honest. But so this is interesting, because I was thinking about, as you were talking, I was thinking about my upbringing versus my wife's upbringing. Mm-hmm. So in my family of origin, we are loud. Like we're loud people. And if you've been around us, you know that. You can hear us coming forever. But like what happens is like things like, oh, I'm fine. And then like everybody starts screaming. And you have this like knockdown, drag out fight, and you argue and bicker. And then it's over and you all hug and cry, and then, whatever. My wife's family is totally different in that if you raise your voice or if there's a negative emotion, people start shutting down. And my wife is in that way. So, and I'm an external processor and she's an internal processor. So something would happen in our relationship or in something, and I would be like, let's talk about it right now. And she would be like, I need a second.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was thinking about the way that I engage those differences, those conflicts, it would be considered conflicts or differences of opinion, are different now than I would have even 10 years ago, because of the relationship with my wife, because I wanted to maintain this relationship and recognizing we were not the same, and we engage those same. But so like ultimately what it means is that when we have a disagreement, we talk about it way after I want to and way before she wants to. So we sort of like this compromise in that, and sort of navigating our own relationship. So I think it's interesting you talk about, as you have been in those conversations, figuring out what's not like manipulative, not like figuring out what's going to work, but being able to like listen and argue and stand for yourself, but also do that in a way that's loving and inviting.
Well, I wouldn't say that's what I do, actually.
Okay.
And this is going to be...
Maybe I'm giving you too much credit.
You really, truly are, yeah. But as I've like, we're entering this very like polarization time. Like it's like you were talking about earlier, there's always a side. Like you have to pick a side. You can't be in between, or like you said, you're not an ally, or you're not educated, or like you have to have a side, and that's just it. But as you were talking, like people say they value honesty, but when you're honest, you hurt their feelings, right? Like if someone asks me like, do I look bald? And you say, yeah, that person
what was that? Why did you use that example?
And you say, yes, that person obviously wanted you to be honest with them, but they didn't want you to say that. And so, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that like, I love to be honest with people, but I do not know the balance of honest and loving. Like, I don't know how do I say that in a nice way? You know, like can you, like, what does that look like? So I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, I think so. I will say, like, just buckle up, because I don't think it gets easier necessarily, but I do think I'm interested in thinking about honesty. Another bit about me is that I'm ADHD, and so I'm neurospicy.
I hate that you say that, by the way.
I love that. I like being neurospicy, because neurodivergence just seems like too much. But what it means is that I'll just say a thing. I talk about, Bruce Ray Chow, who was here a few weeks ago, author. He talks about naming the elephant in the room. But Ibu Patel, who started Interfaith Youth Corps, a Muslim writer who's one of my heroes, wrote a book called Interfaith Conversation of Primer. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was talking about not necessarily naming the elephant first, but naming the furniture. So like having a conversation about what's in the room, the commonalities that we can all see, and then eventually talk about the elephant. Like, Craig, you may be balding, versus saying, hey, Baldy, not starting there. Right. And so I think being able to figure out the thing that I struggle with is figuring out what I need to say and what do I want to say, and are those the same thing, right? When I'm being honest. And so how do because you and I have talked about with talking with people and dealing with situations that sometimes you just want to be like, nope, this is it. Like cut it off.
Yeah.
But that's not going to end up being generative to the continued relationship or conversation. Is just going to be like, just make everybody mad. So how do you, I think it's always a balance, right? I don't know. I don't think I've figured it out, but being able to say like, no, but in a way that can be heard, not just in a way that feels, aggressive or.
Yeah. Stern is what.
Yeah. Okay.
I often get called assertive and stern when I say things how they are. Like,
so we call this executive, oh gosh, I forgot. It's like being a boss.
Yeah.
Executive leadership skills. That's what it is.
Who's we?
Me and my wife, about our kids.
But
especially our daughter.
At work, at the coffee shop that I work at now, when someone is assertive or stern, or they like coach someone in not a like positive reinforcement way, it's called Ashleying. Like, oh, I did an Ashley today. Like, I'm a verb. Yeah.
Yes. You got verb. That's amazing. I feel like you should like put that on your resume.
Yeah. And it's only because like I work with a lot of young people who are afraid of hurting someone's feelings, and I'm not, because I think that to better yourself, you have to know the truth. Like, I am not going to say, I will compliment you when you do well, but I'm also going to let you know when you don't. And so it has been really hard growing up or like maturing in this age where I feel like you can't be that way. Like, we are like sugarcoating everything so we don't hurt people. And I think that it's actually super detrimental to maturing.
I actually was doom scrolling on TikTok this morning, and I saw a psychologist talking about this, about not every disagreement is a trauma.
Yeah.
Although, so I've had some conversation about this, because I think that sometimes language like trauma and some of our language is overused, so therefore it loses its meaning. And so not everything is a trigger. Not everything. If you feel uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you're unsafe. And like, so I think I'm hearing what you're saying about there's got to be a balance, right? Of yes, like I grew up, I'm much older than you. So,
much
older than you. When I was growing up playing sports, and even in Little League, like the things that coaches would say to you, if I coach and have coached, or if those things get said now,
right?
Like it's super bad.
Lawsuit,
right? Like
yeah.
you're like viral. And and so as a coach who has high, and as someone who has high standards, for employees, for, the people around me, because I hold myself to high standards, being able to say like, you got to do better, but being able to way to say that you've built up enough around that relationship to be able to say that they can hear that versus that you're just beating them up. Does that make sense? So but that's a really hard thing to be able to say, no, you're wrong.
And be better.
And do better.
How do you build a relationship with someone that you just think is bad?
Yeah, that's tough. So maybe you don't. I think you can, when a coworker relationship, that's a totally different ballgame, right?
Right.
Supervisor versus...
I just mean in general too.
Yeah, in general, right. I think also I heard, that idea, protect your energy. Shut up.
Yeah.
I'm
with you.
There's nuance, right?
That's an Ashley verb.
Right. There's a nuance, right? I do think people should protect, and my kids say stuff and I'm like, come on. But no, you have to go to school because you have to go to school.
Right.
I would be, after COVID, it's a way different ballgame. But when I was a kid, as long as you weren't dying, actively, you went to school.
Right.
When I was in 9th grade, I got 32 stitches in my arm at night. I was at the hospital until 11 o'clock, and I was in school the next morning with my bandages on.
This is a prime example because I feel like if you were to tell someone from this generation, I think we complain a lot about older generations where we say back in my day, we went to school when it was 30 feet of snow, blah, blah, blah. And so I think and I could totally be off. This could also just not be what my generation thinks. And this is just what I'm seeing. But we weaponize competence to excuse our incompetence. Does that make sense?
Because someone's willing to do something that makes them bad because...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's easier to just not do it than to overcome the obstacles or what it would take to do it.
Yeah. I also wonder about... That makes me think about the monetization of everything, and going viral and making money off being an influencer, and sort of those conversations about there was a level as a Gen X person, we have this latchkey kid, our parents didn't know where we were. I literally have stories where I would leave my house at 10 o'clock in the morning and not get home until dark when the streetlights came on. These were literally the rules of my house, and my parents didn't know where I was, which they knew where I was generally
in theory. Yeah.
Right. But it wasn't, I don't feel like I was neglected. Right. but now even my kids, if I don't know where they are, if I don't search their, it's partly my fault too. It's not but I wonder about, I hear people say, well, I don't want to do that because I don't like it. Or, it makes me, I'm that doesn't, whether you like it or not is not really part of the conversation. It's what has to get done, what needs to get done versus now. So there's this level that we were talking about spectrums, right? So there's this, I think maybe the level I grew up with from previous generations and my generation wasn't super healthy, right? Stuff that emotion down, stuff that mental health, a mental health day. That's not words that went together, right? Stuff that down, just put your head down and get to work, right? It doesn't matter if it's unhealthy. It doesn't matter if it's abusive, just do it because it needs to get done. And then there's this other side of the spectrum, which is anything that doesn't make me feel like butterflies and unicorns is
I can't
dangerous,
do it.
Right? So I just wondered about if, I was talking to somebody recently who was super anxious about an event. And I was like, but you like doing this. What are you talking about? They're like, I don't know. I want to do this, but my body's feels like I'm having this anxiety. And they were talking and they were like, shouldn't I trust my gut? And I think yes. And also my wife was talking about how every time she gets on a plane, she's like, this is the one that's going to kill me.
Yeah.
Right. And
today,
right. Today it's a different conversation, right? Maybe even 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But being able to say actually flying is way safer than driving, like all that stuff, right? And she sort of lets like talk her gut out of this anxiety. And I mean, we still hold hands on takeoff and landing just because I know that she gets nervous. Now, she doesn't do that with a random stranger when she's on her flight by herself or whatever, but just thinking about that, like sometimes your body is telling you something and that's good and you should pay attention. And also sometimes your body is reacting to something that's not real.
Yeah.
And so how do we balance those things, right? How do we encourage the resilience for you, for me, for whoever? Because I think it's not just younger generations. I think there's some older generations that have never been told no.
Yeah, definitely.
Or they think because I'm older now, I get to say whatever I want. And somebody doesn't go like, I think there's been, especially in the church, has been a ton of bad behavior, toxic behavior that's been excused because, right, it's a church. We got to be nice.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate nice, but I love kind, right? Kindness is being able, like, so if you, as a boss or as like, if you have a supervisor, being able to say like, in order for us to do our jobs as a team, you have to be able to do this.
Right.
That's kind versus if you don't do this, now you're putting everybody at risk because you're not doing your job. And so being able to, but like, I know you can do it. I trust you, but there's a level that we have to live up to.
Yeah. And this circles back to like why I even got so involved in a church is like I said, I wanted to get the message across that everyone is loved, period. That's it. And I think that especially younger kids, like as they're growing up or like Sunday school or Wildlife, Young Life, you're taught like to love, but you're never like really explicitly told what that is. And if you are told what that is, it's like a toxic kind of love. Like you're just supposed to love your neighbor. And so my real neighbors are not great people. But like, you're just supposed to love them just because you were told. And so I think that as I've like grown in my faith, I've been figuring out that like love isn't just, you don't just give love because you can. I mean, you're supposed to, but like, how do I say this? Hold on. Like there is a healthy way to love and it's not always agreeing with someone, you know, it's like, we were talking earlier today about this, but like support and love, I think that those two get like, people think that they're synonyms for each other. And I think that mindset is actually kind of toxic. Like if you love someone, you don't always support what they do. Like you can love a drug addict, but you don't support that they do drugs. And I think that obviously is a very drastic example, but there can be behaviors in someone that you love dearly, but you don't support. And so I think I'm very passionate again about like loving people, but getting the message across that not all behaviors can be supported.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction too, that behaviors bit, because I know we talk about here is that everyone is welcome, or as much as we can be, right? Like we're human beings. And we're going to get it wrong, and we're going to screw up, but we're going to continue to be welcoming. But not all behaviors are welcome. Like if you're going to come in and be toxic, it doesn't, like your perspective matters, but if you're just going to be toxic, then that's not going to be something that's tolerated. And it doesn't mean that we're going to kick you out or not talk to you. It just means that like, nope, we can't do that. Nope, we can't. I mean, we've had plenty of people who, you know, do stuff and we say, or I say, hey, like, let's do this differently, or hey, you can't do that, or whatever. And it's not out of like, you're wrong or you're a bad person. It's about, hey, here's how we can be a healthy community. And maybe you like just yelling. I had this guy who used to, he just loved arguing, but like gruffly. And so he just got to bully people all the time. And then like I showed up and started yelling back at him. And like, I don't like recommend this, but like at yelling at church members, but we would have these like yelling matches, or like yelling is an extreme, like we weren't really yelling, but
I understand,
intense conversations. And people would be like in the like, oh my gosh, you know, like super nervous. And then afterwards we'd just be like, hey, what's up? Yeah. Like, but I was just reflecting. I was able to reflect his gruffness to him. And most of the time he could take it because he knew it. But But I think being able to have those toxic behaviors is not thing. I was also thinking about something we said with the drug addiction bit. I heard about a mom who created a safe use space in her backyard. So, which is totally blew my mind. This idea of like place to have safe use, so you can do drugs, like illegal, hard drugs, but we're going to do it in a safe way. So there's going to be a sober person, got Narcan, all that stuff. And they have revived people for, who OD'd or whatever. And it was like, but they're here today. They still might be addicted, but
They're alive.
Right. And so which blew my mind, because I thought like, you're just enabling. Right. But also, how many people do you and I engage with on the street or at our building who are in need of someone to just care for them? And they're, because of their addiction issues or mental health issues or whatever, they don't need someone to control them. They just need somebody to like
make eye contact with them. And that is like a prime example too, is of where we get support and love confused, because obviously we live in Salem and we have a houselessness issue, and it's not like there's not anything that really can do at this level, but there is, because like we open a warming center, like we get them off the streets. But I think people think that like if you support them, like when we open our doors, we are just like enabling them to be houseless, instead of we actually love them enough to bring them in so they're not cold. I don't think those two things connect in people's heads. Like it's not the same.
Yeah, I love that idea, because I think it's like back to the binaries. Mm-hmm. Like it's like, well, you let this guy do this thing, so you must. I'm trying to think of an example. Like we had a guy who was sleeping on our porch. He ended up doing landscaping for us. Like randomly, he would just like do landscaping for us. Like, oh, we like show up and there's a bush. Like, okay, cut. Yeah. Like, awesome. And they're like, well, you got to get him out of here. I'm like, well, I mean, maybe.
Right.
But, and he was doing some dumb stuff. And so we like chat. He ended up, like, we ended up creating boundaries for him, but we're still in contact with him. We still engage with him. And so, I think that's interesting. That so like this, like, well, if you allow that person who was bad that one time, right, then you're somehow a bad person and you're an enabler and all that stuff. And I think there's a huge balance between listening to someone and listening to someone's concerns or feelings, or which are like, this is what I've learned is like all feelings are valid, right? Like, so if all your feelings are valid, that's great. But,
feelings aren't facts.
Feelings might not be facts, right? Like, this is going to get me in trouble, but I got real mad because have done a lot of like anti-racism work and like privilege and like thinking about and engaging with communities that have been left out and learning about impact and intent and all that stuff. And then like I would be in a situation where I would not be the one in power, totally fine with that, but then it'd be treated differently because of my skin color, my race, my age, my gender, all that stuff. And then I would say, this feels bad. And they'd be like, it doesn't matter because you're white. Right? Like, which I get, right? Because historically, I have been able to like push past that. But if if all feelings are valid, then mine are too. And so then how do I then find a place where I can have a conversation about working through those feelings versus those feelings becoming a boundary for my conversation and growth? Because I have been checked, right, before, and sort of I am far less defensive than I used to be when people are like, well, you're just a white dude. What do you know?
Right.
Right. Which
true.
It's a true statement, right? Totally. But also I do know some things. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about this, like, back to the binaries of like, well, if you're this, you can't be that. And if you're something else, you can't be, I don't know. Like, I was thinking about there's this quote in the Bible. There's a guy with a demon in him and Jesus asks him his name, and the demon says, "We are legion," which is like the coolest. Like I can like see it like cinematically in my head. But I think about our identities and our upbringings. Like you and I have talked a little bit about our upbringings and our and like the identities as not as badges or credentials, but it's just like realities of how we engage with the world. But we are so many different things in so many different contexts, right? Like you at the church versus you at your job, your other job versus me here versus me out in the community. Like those are fascinating sort of think about. And then how do we then engage and live in those different identities, spectrums, whatever we want to call it, throughout the course of our life. So how do you navigate as a younger person,
No, just say young. It's okay.
a young person, how do you navigate? Because the way that I hear you talk is a lot different than a lot of other folks that I know your age that talk. How do you navigate engaging with those around you who are in similar situations about like this thing you've talked about where being direct is bad or being...
I'm not actually sure I have an answer for you. Because kind of like what you were saying is that we have these different like facades that we put on outside. Like me at work is a completely different person than me hanging out with my friends. And so, but for me, that's really not true. Like I really suck at being anything else other than what I want to be in that moment. So like I don't have friends with my coworkers because I don't want them. Like I don't want them to be friends. I don't want to see them outside of work.
Right.
So like it has been hard for me. And like this makes me sound like I'm just really mean. And I try not to be. Like I can be. I can obviously, I can obviously really be mean. But like I don't know. I tried to surround my circle, like have my circle be with people who I can have conversations with, because it's really hard for me to be around people who we were talking about, like there's always sides. Like it is so hard for me to be near someone who is stuck on a side, because I don't know what kind of life that is when you are so stuck in your ways that having a conversation is detrimental to you. Like that is not a life that I want to live. That is not a life that I want others to live. I want us to be able to engage freely with each other and say things. And that, like, being said, if someone disagrees with me and says mean things to me, like obviously I'm going to respond the way that I want other people to respond. Like it would be hypocritical of me to be like, oh my God, like my feelings are hurt. Like I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And like, so I don't know how to go back to your question, but I surround myself with people who are willing to have hard conversations.
Yeah. I was thinking there's word that when I was graduating seminary and sort of going up, it's like this movement in the church called like the emergent movement, emerging. It was a whole thing, whatever. But it was authenticity was like a super big word. And I think one of the things that I have valued greatly in my own work, in my own life, is like being real. Mm-hmm. But I can't be 100% my whole self all the time, right? That's not healthy for me. Also, it's not healthy for the conversation. Like it,
right.
There are times and there's like the code switching, right? Like, so if you hear me talking to my friends from back home, it will sound different than you hear, like the language will be different than you hear me preach on Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. Although the intent and the sort of, it's the same person. I'm not putting on a front. I'm just changing. I'm altering the conversation so that for the space, like appropriate for the space. And I think sometimes people are like, if you can't accept all of me all the time, then you can't be with me, which I think is unrealistic by any stretch. And I also think it's okay to be like, that hurt my feelings. Yeah. Right. Like, but I was thinking about I totally lost my train of thought, but I love the idea of thinking about, navigating conversation and being open to conversation. Like we were talking about, there's this thing that's going around, and it's called Trump derangement syndrome. So it's a ridiculous thing. So it's like, if you disagree with Donald Trump, then you must be deranged. Got it. And it doesn't, and only because you would agree with it if someone else is doing it, but because Donald Trump is doing it, you hate it.
So it's like a name thing.
Yeah. So it's like and I think there's a bill that's like actually like trying to, I think it's actually in West Virginia, which I'm sad about.
Wow.
That's they're like actually trying to name it a mental illness. So
that's crazy.
Right.
Wow.
But also I think there are things that have happened in the last couple months in our government that have been like, it's interesting. I want like, that may actually be good.
Right.
Or more good or bad. I don't know, like what I want, but not the way I want it, like not how I want it, but like, but because like this person, an individual said it, like if it was Biden or if it was Trump or if it was pick any political candidate or religious leader or whatever, musician, whatever, I can't like it because Taylor Swift said it, or I can't like it because
that's true. Yeah.
you know, like whatever, like it's because that person is this, I can't, you know, like for me, it was like the New York Yankees. Like I hated the New York Yankees, but then I went and saw Derek Jeter play, who is this like Hall of Fame player. And I was like, oh my God, he's like really good. Like Tom Brady. I hate that dude.
Wow.
Dude's a nightmare. Nobody should be like Tom Brady. Like, he said some really interesting things and like, he's really good at it anyway. So I was thinking about that, like this idea to being able to have conversations with people who are different than us. And then like, because this person has a particular identity doesn't make them anathema or like a leper or something.
And I'm thinking about that, like you said, Taylor Swift, and obviously like, I don't know her personally. I just know like the articles I read, the comments that I read about her, and I have a preconceived notion about her. Like when you said her, like for some reason, like I got my stomach dropped. I was like, that's so weird. I have no relation to her. And then I was thinking like how we attribute people's characteristics to these, like, I mean, this is going to make sense in a second, but like right now I work at a very big coffee chain, right? And I make decent money. But I am still a part-time barista and I didn't go to college and all this stuff, but I'm taking the steps right now to open my own business. And I think telling people that I am a business owner gets me more respect than telling people that I work as a barista at this big coffee chain, even though I will make significantly less money opening my own business than I do at this chain. I will get more respect because I don't know why. Like what we value in people is so completely different and wrong, and we have preconceived notions about it. So my point being is that like I think people are afraid to have these conversations because of what is tied to these conversations. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. I think like you talked about earlier, like the facade, they're like these facades we put on. And I think I was having this conversation with another pastor a while ago about like church in particular, which is a specific animal in it, but I think it fits with a ton of other, like the way that's supposed to be, whatever that is, right? Well, I don't want to brag. I don't want to feel like people think I'm braggadocious, or I don't want to.
Braggadocious, is that a word?
Braggadocious is a word.
Crazy.
Like they don't want to, because like, you know, someone might see me negatively.
Right.
Right. So I don't want to tell people that I have this. I had a church member one time, like a long time ago, say to me, I think it was better when we didn't know what everybody thought.
Yeah.
Right. So they valued it was better for them to go to church when they didn't know what someone thought about a political or theological. They were just the guy that sat next to them in the pew.
Right.
Right. Like, did they know anything about them? I don't know. Right. But it was this. So then I'm just trying to balance this because I don't think that's actually better.
Right.
But I also don't think saying, well, you voted for this person, or you own a truck, or you own a gun, or whatever the like, or you
indicators. Yeah. They're crazy.
Whatever that marker is, that somehow like pigeonholes you into this like identity that's all encompassing, when even if we grew up in the same place, this like we were different people and we engage in different ways. I was thinking about like right now at the church, we're talking about like these words that are seemingly opposites. And I was thinking about when we talk about those binaries, often, you know, it's either or, right? And then, but you and I were talking about how sometimes Like if you look at people who were against vaccinations, like pre-COVID, like that was a left, like liberal groups of people who were like, don't take vaccines, we know that kind of stuff. But then when COVID happened, it's sort of like the like sort of fringe left became the fringe right. So it was like a circle, like an ellipse maybe, rather than an either like a both sides, like
a line,
like a line. It was more like an ellipse. So it came back around. And so I was thinking about this where like in seminary, we were talking about same-sex marriage. Like this is before it was legal. And we were talking about it in the church, and we were given each group. There was a group in each class that was given these different perspectives. And the one that I was given, I think because of where the professors knew I stood, was non-welcoming, non-affirming. So they were like, you're going to have to deal with this because you're so anti this.
Got it.
Like you're so, you are affirming and welcoming. And so now you have to argue against it. And so we went around the room and so I, did my discussion and like argued for not being welcoming and not being affirming, which is sort of basically like, because it was about marriage specifically. Marriage means these things. It's this commitment. It's not just fly by night. It's not just because you like it. There's all this deep commitment that you make to another person. And so we go around the room and we get to this one that's like, yeah, do whatever you want. And it's everything. And there's not really rules and I was like, that doesn't feel right. And then it felt like that was the like middle.
Yeah.
And then it got around to welcoming and sanctifying was the way that it was defined. And this welcome, like, so yes, we approve of same-sex marriage and we're going to sanctify it. So it's going to be a sacrament. Like in the Presbyterian Church, we don't think marriage is a sacrament, but in other churches they do. And so the idea that like, yeah, this is a covenant relationship that you are engaging with another person. And so actually the welcoming and sanctifying was closer to the non-welcoming, non-affirming than the like, do whatever you want. And so it was this big, almost like a circle. And like, they certainly weren't the same, but they were closer together than either one was to what I thought was the middle.
Right.
And so I think about that as I think about some of the pastors that I engage with who are from other, like theologically, we are not anywhere close to the same place, right? But because of their values of commitment, the values of communion, seriously thinking about what God is calling us to do, those kinds of things, like I am 100% in on that.
Right.
And my faith like affects everything I do, or I hope it does. That makes sense to me, but where I land is in a very different place, right? So I can connect with that intention, maybe is the right word. I don't know, but the impact of it or how it gets played out is like
different,
drastically different. So it's just a fascinating thing to me think about, like as the people that think we're furthest from might be the ones that are closest to us.
Yeah, truly.